Welcome to Riverside Reflections. I'm your host, Denise Mananis, Associate Vice President for External Affairs for St. John's Riverside Hospital. And today we have a very special guest. The City of Yonkers' wonderful mayor, Mr. Michael Spano, is with us today. Welcome.
It's nice to be here. Really.
So I'm sitting here and I want to talk to you about, because you're a Yonkers guy, and I want to talk to you about a lot of that, but you're sitting here in front of me a little bit transformed. And so I being a healthcare facility, we're all sort of watching what we're doing and trying to be healthy. What are you doing that prompted this transformation?
It was a combination of things. We've had some health scares in my family. I'm 16, and so we've had, my youngest brother has, liver and colon cancer, and my oldest sister has cancer. And so I think that, coupled with my 60th birthday party, where I really kind of had a good time, ate a lot of cake, Ooh. And went to the doctors, and he said, I think you really need a change. And I think it was that and a little bit of a scare. Honestly.
Somehow when it comes to your siblings, right, it becomes a little real.
Yeah, it's very real.
Yeah.
And, and they're doing fine, thank God. They're both doing well.
Thank God.
They, but it's kind of like a gut check. It says you really, if you want to see your kids get married and enjoy your grandchildren, you got to change it up a little bit. And I will say this, I sleep much better. I feel much better.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's everything gets better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. My blood pressure is normal, and if it wasn't for this job, it'd be even lower. But
I get that.
But no, I feel good, and at the end of the day, like you said, nobody can write your path. I mean, that's up to someone else to decide. But you could try to make that path a little easier.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what
good for you.
I'm trying to do. I feel good, but it's a day, every day.
Every day.
Every day, right?
Good for you.
Recommit.
So, you're a Yonkers gentleman. I'm very interested to know. I'm from Yonkers as well, and I know the reasons why I've stayed, why I work here. But you've had an interesting trajectory. Can you tell me a little bit about your family history? And because I'm sure that a lot of people in Yonkers know this story, but there are people who may not. So I'd love to hear from you.
Well, I'm the grandson of Italian immigrants, and my grandfather came here from Italy. He's Barese, so he's from that portion, the Pugliese portion of Italy. Came here, as a lot of people who come from that region, back in 1915 or so, and was an ice and coal man. They didn't have refrigerators back then,
right.
and they heated with coal, and they had ice boxes.
So he was in business all year.
Yeah,
that's right.
And I still have his ice tongs, and I still have the badge they would put in the window. It said Spano Brothers.
Wow.
One side it would be ice, and the other side would be oil. It would be coal, and it would determine, do you want 20 pounds of ice, 30 pounds of ice, whatever it was. He started with a horse and buggy. And then eventually that business grew into a kerosene business that became an oil business.
Wow.
Oil and heating contracting. My nephew Lenny still operates Spano Fuel, and this
That's
family's
a beautiful story. Such an American story, right?
Yeah, it really is, and it was a lot. It's a lot of fun because I think it best prepared me for politics, because they had to take care of people, make sure that their heat was running.
Fascinating.
And that was kind of like what my grandfather
Taking
did.
Care of
he
the
had his
people in
big
the
book. He used to
neighborhood.
tell me he had a book, and he'd scroll it open. He'd say, "This one owes you money. That one owes you money."
That's great. So you remember all of that, and then you are one of 16.
I'm one of 16.
Yeah, and so your grandparents settled here, and 16 siblings is interesting.
Yeah. My grandparents settled here. My parents were both born and raised in Yonkers.
Right.
My mother lived on Lawrence Street, and my father lived on Riverside Avenue. And so they met, and they got together when they were really young.
And they were a great couple.
She was 14. He was barely 17.
Wow.
And he went off to, to Korea and served in the United States Marine Corps. And then, they started
The rest
their
is
life.
history. So a portion of your siblings were actually born at St. John's. Is that
Yeah. Probably about half.
about
born,
half?
you know.
Okay.
So I because I was always felt I was born here, right?
Right.
One day I realized that I had a conversation with my mother, found out, no, I was in fact born in Misericordia. The other half of my siblings were born
Wow.
here.
So your family ties to St. John's. I mean, I'm all about St. John's. So your family ties to St. John's go back.
Listen, when you're one of 16 children and
Yeah.
you have probably 200 first cousins and second cousins all live in Yonkers.
That's
St. John's is a very big part of your life.
Right.
And people come here for a lot
every
of reasons.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're horrible reasons, but
But
lots of time they're for joyful reasons.
And you've had 3 joyful reasons happen here, isn't that true?
That's right. Michael, Alexandra, and Christopher.
Yeah.
Born right here.
Yeah, and I was there. I remember the photography going out the door.
Nancy Salato was one of the nurses. I know Nancy just passed away, but a Yonkers lady.
Yeah, through and through.
Yeah, that's right.
And there's a whole history of people who are that way here and who have taken care of the community.
Like I said, when people come to a hospital, it's sometimes for
Tough.
we all know for some tough stuff, but I always felt that when we came here, it was always with a lot of love. There was always a lot of love coming from St. John's.
Yeah. So I want to turn a little bit back to your decision making, growing up the way you did with your family in Yonkers. Why did you choose government? I mean, I know that there's a thing about your grandfather and knowing everybody in the neighborhood, but what was
Yeah, I know. I have a story that a lot of people, I don't know if they even believe me anymore, but, when I was in the 3rd grade and I was going to St. Peter's Grammar School on Hawthorne Avenue, and I used to campaign for my father, and he was running for county legislator at the time, and I would get to put the signs up in the window. And I remember the parish priest coming to me saying, listen, you can campaign for your father, but you can't put your father's campaign stuff on the windows. We're the Catholic Church, not allowed to do that. And but anyway, I told him then that I would be mayor. I wanted to be mayor of Yonkers, and that I would drive a black car.
I think that's right.
Yeah. So I got the black car.
You got the black car. You got to be mayor. Being a public servant is not easy.
It's funny. I was, and I don't even know at the time what I was doing. Did I really think it through all the way? I don't know that I did. I know that when I became 18, I wanted to register to vote, right? And I also knew that I wanted to be a district leader. District leader in your party, that's probably the most basic, but it's probably the most basic thing you can do in terms of politics, because district leaders become ward leaders and become city leaders. They pick candidates who run for office on your line or on that line. I was a Republican at the time, and so 18 years old, I wanted to be a district leader, and then I wanted to be a ward leader. Before I was 21, I was 4th ward leader, and then of course that put me in a position. That by the time I was 27, then when the position for assembly came up in a special, that those 24 ward leaders had a decision to make who would run for the assembly to fill an unexpired term, because Terry Zaleski became mayor.
I remember
and
that.
They chose me to run. Now, everyone knew it was a redistricting year, that I probably wouldn't be there long, because once you get up there, they recut the lines and they cut you out.
Yes.
And they did. They cut me right out of the position. And that's what happens. That's politics.
Politics is hard.
Yeah. But I was able to use that, that opportunity to to kind of push me into another position. I ran for a county legislator. I won. And Cecile Singer, who's
she's on our board.
My dear friend, and I love her to death. She was the assemblywoman at the time.
Yeah.
They had actually put me and her together in the district. I didn't run, and she served 2 years. And then she said to me one day, she came to see me, she put her arm around me, she goes, are you ready to come back? I said, yeah. I said, why? She goes, I'm done. I don't need to go to Albany anymore, but I will tell you this. If you tell me you're not going to run, then I'm going to run again. But if you're ready to come
What a
in,
wonderful
I want to be
opportunity
there.
and a mentor.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I always tell people who think that Nick got me really into politics, it was Cecile Singer.
I love that story.
I love Cecile Singer.
Yeah, she's an amazing woman. Look, I'm a Yonkers girl, and I have seen the city change greatly over all the years that I've been in it. And what you've brought to the city of Yonkers is really quite remarkable. So I just kind of want to talk to you about thinking about all of the achievements that you've had in your tenure. What are you most proud of that you've accomplished so far?
You know, I was just an innate kind of like quality, or I guess is the only word I can use, is that I always was proud of the place I was born and raised in.
Yeah.
I was super proud to be an American, super proud of flag. I was a big Ronald Reagan fan.
Yeah, it's hard not to be.
And yeah, and I was always that kind of kid that, this is where my grandfather came, and this is the place I'm proud of, and this is the place that I'm going to stake my claim in, and I'm going to stay here, right? And so I also knew that when I ran for mayor that, there was a story to tell about Yonkers. Yonkers has a really interesting history.
It does.
It really does.
Yeah.
You talk about, in a lot of ways, you can talk about Lower Manhattan in the 1700s, and you could talk about Yonkers. Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize that.
No, they don't.
Don't realize that I almost said Christopher Columbus. That George Washington, used to refer to Yonkers in his memoirs all the time. He would call it Little Yonkers, and he was going to Little Yonkers today, and he would come up here for a lot of reasons. Some of it to see Mary Phillips, but he had many other reasons to come here. I mean, just before the Battle of White Plains, which was a very important battle because you wouldn't have had, I guess, the Battle of Saratoga if you didn't have the Battle of White Plains first.
Right.
Well, you wouldn't have had that if it wasn't George Washington on Valentine Street praying before he took the Bronx River, which was that Indian trail up to White Plains, right? And so there's a lot of history here. There's a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
My point is that there are more good things happening in Yonkers on a daily basis than not. But we weren't telling the story about Yonkers, and we needed to do that. And that was my first action. Was we were going to tell the story of Yonkers, and we were going to tell the story every single day. If I had to, every day hold 3-4 press conferences so that we could talk about the good things that are happening in our school district, the good things that are happening in our neighborhoods, the good things that are happening in terms of economic development. We needed to change the talk, the speak of Yonkers.
Right.
And honestly, it needed to happen within first, because we had people, because of unfortunate circumstances in and around our city, desegregation and some corruption issues and some other issues. The city residents itself didn't feel as good about the city as they should have. And so it's really hard to get people out there to say nice things about us if we're not saying nice things about ourselves.
Exactly.
And, and that's where I started. And I really believe that if I had to point to one big accomplishment, aside from what we've done with the schools, what we do with crime, what we've done with economic development and all that, which I think all piggybacked on one thing: how do people feel about their city? And what are they saying when they go out there?
So you're talking about reinvigorating the care they feel about this as their home.
People are proud to say they're from Yonkers now. They're not afraid. There was a time they were afraid to use the Y word.
Yes, I don't disagree with that. I find it very interesting that no matter where I go in the world, I run into people from Yonkers.
Yes.
And it's so odd to me. And the reaction is always, oh my God, I love Yonkers, which is a wonderful thing to feel, because look at it. It's just spectacular.
And I don't let people get away with saying bad things. I was at a conference once in Carrier, it was United Technologies.
Yeah.
Now, United Technologies purchased two companies, Carrier, right? They do the air conditions for the big skyscrapers, and they purchased Otis Elevator, right?
Oh,
And they were having this big meeting where they were telling everyone who would listen about how United Technologies is responsible for skyscrapers because without the inventions of their companies, the inventions of air conditioning and the elevator
elevators,
and the
they
elevator
wouldn't
brake,
exist.
they wouldn't exist.
Right.
Now I was like, okay, guys, but remember, Otis Elevator was started in Yonkers. And if you travel the world, even today, and look at elevators, you'll see it has the name Otis.
Interesting.
You know, right?
It has such a great history, and I'm always so proud to tell people that we're the first hospital between New York City and Albany.
Wow.
People don't realize that. We're founded in 1869. We're on 155 years of service.
I've seen the picture of the old hospital.
Yeah, they're great. I mean, the horse-drawn buggy and the was the ambulance, which
Right.
I'm glad we're living now. But still, it's fascinating what this city was. But I
It
mean,
is.
I see a reinvigoration in companies coming here and things, and I know that that's part of your strategic plan is to do that. Movies are here. What else are you working on that's really fabulous?
Like I said, we want to make sure that that we have a safe community, a clean community. We want to make sure that our children get educated here.
Right.
Because you can't expect people to come to live here, to make a family here, to invest here.
Right.
If they don't Google Yonkers and see that we don't have make sure that we have a top
Good resources, yeah.
We have, and I criticize Albany all the time because they don't give us enough state funding, and they don't. That doesn't mean our delegation doesn't fight hard for it, because they do, and I was a part of that delegation, and they've gotten us more money, but New York State still has a ways to go.
Yeah.
But we got rid of the woe is me attitude. Woe is me attitude was, we don't get enough money for education. We don't get our schools
We
don't
can't
get
be
enough
held
money.
accountable, yeah.
Right? Our schools don't have enough money to repair the infrastructure. You know what? That's just nonsense. Because at the end of the day, they're our kids, and we're going to treat them like that, and we're going to make sure that every kid has an opportunity, and we're going to make sure that no matter what challenges are, we'll meet those challenges, and we'll show the world
Right.
that we can do it better. And we have shown New York State, and I've had this discussion with some of the governor's office just the other day. Isn't it amazing? We get the least amount of funding, but we have the highest graduation rate. I said,
That's such an
maybe
achievement.
you guys should come here
And see what we're doing.
What's in our secret ingredient. How
Yeah.
are we making it work? But we're making it work because it's really just about being positive, about showing
Right.
people that we shouldn't have excuses for failure, and whatever the excuses are should be opportunities for us to succeed.
Yeah. So the domino effect of all of what your administration has done with the city is very interesting, because we've gone from the fourth largest to the third largest city. And that comes with some interesting side effects. You are, of course, aware that our emergency room here has struggled to keep up with the volume. It was originally built for about 25,000 annual visits, and we're probably at 45,000 annual visits. So we are about to expand our emergency department. We're getting ready. You'll be here for that party because it's long overdue, and the community really needs it, and we need to be able to provide that for our community. The hospital has been such an integral part of the city. What do you think, going through, the growth in the city and all of the projects that you're working on? How do you feel that having a facility such as St. John's benefits our community?
Oh my God! I mean, think about it. When we were growing up, we had Yonkers Professional Hospital, right? We had St. John's, but we also
Yonkers
had
General.
Yonkers General Hospital, right? And that was on
Park Avenue.
right?
Yeah, we
Right.
merged into that. That's one of our buildings.
You know,
Yeah.
And so, here we are, a couple hospitals less, population growing, and and healthcare has changed quite a bit.
It really has.
And St. John's is critically needed for this city.
Yeah.
I mean, you also have an urban center, right? So you have, you have a population that is, some of our families struggle, and some of our families need to know that they have health care right close up. And what you all do here is truly God's work, and is very much needed if you want a city to prosper.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think people don't realize how important hospitals really are until the day they need them. I once heard our CEO talking about, nobody wants to pay for it until something goes wrong. And so I want to talk about some of those days when things went wrong, because we've had a couple. I don't remember if you were assemblyman or mayor at the point that we had Hurricane Sandy.
It was my first year as mayor. It was a great way to get, baptized.
Yes, baptized by fire. Yeah, sure. We had over 100 people actually here because we had a massive power outage, and we are on emergency generator power, and people needed oxygen. They needed other kinds of medical devices. We housed them all. And I think people really, it sort of went, oh, that's very interesting. But I kind of want to talk to you about COVID, because I think that was very...
We went through COVID too.
Yes, we did. And so from the city perspective, I can tell you a lot about what we all went through, but we sort of did partner that, and you were here for a very interesting day, at the end of, I don't know if it was April or maybe it was May of 2020. We actually discharged our 750th patient who, thank God, survived COVID, and it was quite a moment and a moving experience. Can you talk about your experiences with that in the city?
COVID was a really tough time, and you didn't think about it at the time, because at the time, all you're thinking about is, okay, every day goes by, every day you have to have a press conference, every day you have to kind of prop everybody up, let everybody know, we're going to be okay, but these are the things we need to do. And then every day you're dealing with also the horrible outcomes, right? I mean,
it was hard.
Detective Bill Sullivan,
I know,
my best friend. I talked to the police commissioner. I said, "Can I go see Billy?" He goes, "You can't just go into the hospital." And I said, "I know," and he died a day later.
Yeah.
And so, but overall, I mean, St. John's was lifesavers for so many people.
It was really fascinating to be here. And I mean, I came in every day, but I didn't go up on the floors. The protection that everybody went through. We had people who never went home. People who didn't, they were afraid to go home. People look back and think somehow it wasn't real, or wasn't as bad as it was. That first surge was terrible.
I mean, the talk was, could we potentially, get the rink, put some of the bodies in the rink. Remember, there was discussions about that.
Yes.
I mean, there were a lot. There was
it's a lot of real stuff going on.
A lot of real stuff.
But
it's odd though, because, and I'm sure you could feel the same way. You didn't think about that at the time. At least I didn't, because I was preoccupied running a city and making sure that everyone's okay.
You just put one foot in front of you and keep going.
But there was just a lot of wounds on this one, because, like you said, because even when someone passed, no one could get together to mourn their loss.
No, it was really hard.
Right?
It was really hard.
So, and that was hard too, because a lot of families lost loved ones and never really had closure.
That is absolutely, and it was devastating for our staff too, because they were the only ones that were with a lot of the people who passed, and they were trying to connect them on iPhones and iPads and whatever, and it was very tough here. It was very tough here. But on an interesting note, one of the things that happened, and this is a really testament to the city of Yonkers, the love and support that came at us every day was so amazing. And I think you were here the day the police, the fire, the EMTs all came with the sirens going, and then the day that we discharged that patient. So you were here,
I was here.
supporting our team. And I remember looking up outside at our windows, and all the nurses and all of the staff were in the windows, covered in their PPE because they couldn't come out, right? But that love, the food that came from the community, the pictures from the elementary school children. Yonkers is really such an interesting, amazing community. I feel like in your tenure, there's been such a energizing of that spirit.
The sense of community.
Yeah, that real sense of community. And that's something we thrive on.
And you're right. We got through it because, we have great hospitals, great healthcare, great first responders. We're very fortunate in Yonkers because it's still, while we're a big city, we're still kind of a city that you can reach out and touch everybody,
It's a city of neighborhoods.
And, I always tell people, you have, 6 or 7 degrees of separation in Yonkers. If you live in Yonkers, New York, you have 1.
Right.
You generally know somebody that will work its way back.
Or you're related to somebody, or they're related to, it's really crazy how it works. So I want to turn a little bit about sort of the economics of having an organization like St. John's in the city. How important is having this economically to the city? What's the impact on the city?
Well, it's hard to quantify it, but I will say this, that when you have developers coming to Yonkers, they're looking for housing. They're looking for transportation, right? Building housing. We have a lot of transportation options, both on the east side of town, the west side of town, and with the thruway in the middle. They're looking to know that we have good schools. They want to know that if someone gets sick, where are the healthcare facilities?
Right.
And look at where we are, right? So, to have St. John's viable and here in our community, for a young family to know, hey, I'm going to go live in Park Hill, or I'm going to live in Crestwood, or I'm going to live in Colonial Heights, or I'm going to live, and I'm going to make sure that, my wife can go give birth at St. John's.
And it's a great place to do that.
It's like, don't forget Yonkers. Just in the past 10 years, we've seen an increase in our senior population by 30%. That means,
is that right?
Yeah. That means that our seniors are choosing to age in place here.
I love that.
Well, they're not going to age in place if there isn't a hospital that they can depend on close by. And I really believe that's because they have St. John's.
Yeah, so it's very interesting that you said it. was not aware of that stat, but that's really good one to know.
It's a great stat. It says a lot about our city.
It does say a lot.
My parents had the ability to age in place.
Yeah.
And
that's
that was big for our family.
Yeah.
It really was.
That's lovely. St. John's really has an interesting legacy of education too, because we have the Cochrane School of Nursing here. So Cochrane is really been a wonderful boon for the hospital. But one of the things I want you to know, and I want, all the people that you're trying to attract to the city of Yonkers to know, is that we're trying to grow. There's a physician shortage. There's nursing shortage. Nationwide. And so we have the school, and we also have the medical students from LECOM, the largest medical school in the country, do their medical school rotations here. Our pharmacy students do their rotations here. And we have 2 residency programs here. So we're growing our own physicians.
And you now have the medical mile.
And we have the medical mile, that's right. So, this is really also growing, and I think it's sort of in tandem to the growth of the city. So thanks for, being out there and doing all these amazing things for us.
It's funny, when you talk about when we're trying to kind of like have a holistic point of view, right? Making sure that we have the schools, the businesses, and the housing kind of all in sync.
Yeah.
So when we knew that when we built 10,000 units of housing, that was going to bring something, right? We were pleasantly surprised when all of a sudden the film studios started popping up.
Amazing.
But they came here because they saw housing, they saw opportunity, they saw a place they can educate their kids. They probably saw great healthcare facilities, and we were able to use film studios to create a high school.
I know.
And our kids are learning all about the industry.
That's
And they're going to
amazing.
have jobs in that industry when they graduate. And the same thing you have here going on with the Cochrane School of Nursing
Yeah.
and the Medical Mile.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. People kind of growing up in this world, in this environment, learning from this environment, and they're able to take it and make a career out of it. And that's big.
And it keeps people in our
Big
community.
for Yonkers.
Just keep them in Yonkers.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, it's been so wonderful to catch up with you. Thank you so much for being a
thanks
part
for
of our
having
show. Of course. And thank you to our audience for joining us again for another Riverside Reflections. We'll see you again.